looking at the rare earths. So joining me here today, I have Sean Sivasamy, Managing Director and CEO at MetalsGrove Mining. We have Matthew Horgan, Head of Corporate Development and Investor Relations at Peak Rare Earths, and Thomas Kruemmer, Director of Ginger International Trade and Investment. So thanks for joining me today. And maybe to kick things off, can we get a quick introduction from each of you about who you are and what you focus on? Obviously rare earths, but maybe more detailed.
Yeah, I'm Sean Sivasamy, Managing Director and CEO of MetalsGrove Mining. MetalsGrove was listed on the Australian Stock Exchange last year, middle of last year. And within 12 months, we got a new discovery of rare earths. We got a pretty good technical teams, achieved the target. And we are expanding on next drilling program phase 2, then phase 3, middle of next year, maybe. The rare earth project, which in Northern Territory, Western Australia, Northern Territory near Alice Spring. The carbonatite outcrops about 9 kilometers. And we drill only 3 holes on the outcrops. Then follow-up drilling is we're planning to get some decent resource in 20 months' time.
Matt Horgan, work for Peak Rare Earths. We're an ASX listed rare earth development company focused on developing the Nagwala rare earth project in Tanzania. We have one of the highest grade undeveloped projects in the world. Late stage development, binding offtake agreement now in place with our strategic partner Xinghe, targeting a final investment decision in May of next year.
My name is Thomas Kruemmer. My company is Ginger International. What we do is consulting in rare earth and also investment on market. At this time, we are watching approximately 170 rare earth developments worldwide.
All right. So, we're really going to just dive into the rare earths, their role, within the whole green energy transition. And, it's interesting to have a mix of, analysts as well as corporates that work in the space. So to kick it off, I thought we could just look at kind of the outlook for the rare earths and thinking that maybe this is something that Thomas might want to kind of lead the discussion on, just, what's happening within this space, if people didn't know too much about it, what should we be looking at?
Well, as the same as for all other technology metals, the rare earth demand is going to increase substantially. Different from all other technology metals, this growth of demand happens mostly in China, simply because China today has 90% of the rare earth markets. Most people do not really understand where rare earths come in. You should imagine that your entire household will malfunction without rare earths. Your washing machine, your dishwasher, your refrigerator, your air conditioner, your lighting, your TV, your computer, nothing will work. Even your electric toothbrush won't work. So the trouble is that rare earths come in as permanent magnets, and these permanent magnets are in electric motors. So it is a very, very long value chain in which the actual rare earth content is really, really low. This is why rare earths are not on the radar. However, all our technology and all our, say, energy revolution will not happen without rare earths.
Obviously, a growing focus from investors on battery minerals. How we think of it is the battery is only one half of the equation in an electric vehicle. You need something to convert that potential energy into forward movement. That is where a motor comes in, and 90% of all EVs have a rare earth permanent magnet motor within it. So very much a strong nexus with global decarbonisation. The green transition cannot happen without rare earths used in wind turbines as well. But then, as Thomas says, that's kind of the focus. But then rare earths are used in everyday uses, from your iPhone to your tools in your shed to your appliances. So they find their way in almost every application. And so a real demand for rare earths in the coming years.
Maybe to pick up on the EV, electric vehicle part, just to put it into perspective, of the non-ferrous metals used in an electric vehicle, graphite is 32%, copper is 25%, nickel is 20%, and rare earth is 0.7%. And it won't run without the rare earth.
Yeah, as we said, we are on the energy transition. If you look at a few years ago, not many people talking about rare earths. And the understanding of rare earths, people think just it's one element. It's not like for the gold, it's one element. For copper, just one element. Rare earths, it's more than 14 elements, 16 elements. The challenge compared to the other discoveries and the other elements, exploration for the junior exploration companies is very high. And the demand in 10 years' time, it's going to increase 6 times, 4 to 6 times with the current strategy. Then if demand is increasing over the years and years, the number of discoveries in recent years is not compared to the other elements, very low profile discoveries. That is the challenge the most junior exploration companies have. And especially for the processing is going to be another big challenge for rare earths exploration companies and mining companies.
So, you already started to cover kind of actually what my next question was really just looking into, the role for rare earths. What are they used for? Why are they needed? And also kind of their role in the energy transition. I don't know if anyone wants to maybe expand a bit more about kind of the importance of the industry.
Yeah, the focus and what gets everyone excited is the use of rare earths, specifically NdPr, in permanent magnets, which then go into EVs and wind turbines. But then, as we've discussed, the use of permanent magnets is much more widespread than that. One particularly exciting application of rare earth permanent magnets is in the use of high-end robotics in manufacturing, largely flying under the radar, but some market forecasters think that could actually have a even greater impact in demand for NdPr in the coming years. And then, of course, NdPr are only 2 of the 17 rare earth elements. So there are 15 other rare earth elements, some which have some very interesting end uses, applications, and demand areas. Scandium is one which largely flies under the radar. But if you think about the use of scandium, for example, in aluminium alloys and reducing the total weight of aluminium needed, a real critical role that scandium will play in the green transition as well. Rio Tinto investing a lot of money into scandium. Again, flying under the radar, they acquired the Platina mine in Australia for $14 million end of last year. If we're thinking about nuclear power, you can't have fuel rods and nuclear reactors without the likes of samarium and gadolinium in your fuel cells. So a very wide range of applications for rare earths, which collectively point towards a pretty rosy picture for demand for rare earths in the coming years.
Of course, there are hundreds of applications for rare earths, but I think to investors matters most that more than 90% of the total rare earth market value are 4 elements, and these are the elements that go into the permanent magnets. No, I'll say 5. Yeah, so the rest is nice to know, but not really relevant value-wise. So there I would kind of object. Yeah. The other issue is simply, even if we say mine the rare earths abroad, it's a simple fact that the value chains in the West have gone completely missing. There's one country, that is Japan, that still has a somewhat functioning permanent magnet industry, but in the EU and in the US, we simply don't have it. So the growth happens in China. So right now we are in a highly politicized situation where everybody tries to become independent from one another, and particularly from China. It is, to a certain degree, unrealistic if we want to meet carbon neutral targets, and on the other hand, try to get rid of the market leader. This does not fly.
I mean, I'm wondering if we can go a little bit more into that concept. You know, there's been a lot of talk about kind of growing the industry outside of China. You know, where do you see opportunities arising? And maybe this is somewhere where our corporate panelists can kind of jump in.
Like as Thomas said, like the majority of the rare earth magnets is coming out of China. So that's where the rest of the world, there is a big opportunity, especially in Australia and African countries. The recent discoveries in Australia, there is a number of discoveries in the last 24 months, so about 6 or 7 of them. They got JORC resource within 24 months, 20 million, 30 million, 50 million. And there is unexplored ground in Western Australia, especially where we got the ironstone belts, and similar situation in African continent as well. There is a big opportunity for that new investors get into the rest of the world. As I mentioned, like there is currently the majority of the investments is coming from the retail investors. So the junior exploration companies like us, we need some support from the major mining companies, big companies like BHP and REEs, and the government incentives, like that help us, the junior explorers, to find more rare earths deposits and add values to the shareholders, whether it's a government institution or the major mining companies.
So we obviously take a bit of a different position and view to many other companies. We have a Chinese strategic partner, Xinghe. We take the view that it's not on us to be taking geopolitical positions. It is on us to be maximising shareholder value, and we certainly think that we do that with having Xinghe on our side of the table. Xinghe, deeply experienced in the rare earth sector, 20 years in the industry, fully integrated from mine to magnet. And if you look at the role that Xinghe played in restarting the Mountain Pass mine in the US from bankruptcy to now being a $4 billion company, we think that that's a pretty good case precedent for us to try and emulate. I think companies like Xinghe also realise that China doesn't need to be the problem, it can be part of the solution. Companies like Xinghe recognise that if the rare earth sector is to grow, then they themselves need to internationalise their business. They have customers overseas, they have supply chains overseas, and so they too need to be seen to be promoting the industry and sector outside of China. Now, that is exactly what they have done in the US, supporting, as I say, the Mountain Pass mine back into production. And based on our discussions, they're looking to do the exact same thing with our project, which we are very excited by.
Well, there are projects going on that are much touted by certain stock-listed companies, but don't forget there are private companies in rare earths, and I can tell you there's a lot of going on under the hood. So it is slow, but eventually we will see a parallel market evolving outside China, which can be pretty healthy actually. So I can't say more about this because I'm under non-disclosure agreements left, right, center, but there is more than hits the eye.
I mean, you talk about kind of more companies. There's kind of more growth in the market overall. Maybe we can talk a little bit about juniors in this space, what it means to be a junior in this space, opportunities, challenges. What are some of the barriers that you can see coming up? Matthew?
Yeah, so I mean, if we think about the commodity gamut, I think it's fair to say that rare earths are probably near the upper bookend when it comes to technical complexity. And so that really puts the emphasis on companies to invest the time, the money, but also have the discipline to really understand the underlying ore body, to understand their metallurgy, but also ensuring that they're putting forward robust technical solutions for their project. And to give you an example, at Peak, we've spent 10 years developing our flow sheet. We think it is a very robust flow sheet where we currently stand, but even then, still can identify opportunities to further optimise, further refine our flow sheet going forward. Conversely, we have now seen a couple of examples in our sector where companies have perhaps advanced too far beyond the technical limits of their project, and unfortunately that has led to some pretty negative outcomes for shareholders. So I'd really encourage investors such as yourselves to be asking and understanding, when you're looking at rare earth projects, what has been done from a technical perspective, how robust the technical solution is being put forward, and where the gaps are. I'd say the other big challenge in the rare earth space is, frankly, if we think about the off-taker universe, especially short of a refined oxide, it's simply not that large. There are not that many off-takers in the world today. So when companies are thinking about a holistic development solution, they need to be ensuring that they are putting forward a coherent offtake and development strategy which complement each other. And we think at Peak that's kind of what we've tried to achieve with our binding offtake agreement with Xinghe, but then also with our contemporaneous funding and technical EPC MOU that we've put together at the same time to ensure that there is a coherent development solution for our project to get it forward into production.
Yeah, it is, as I said, a very political thing, but as from a commercial perspective, as a junior rare earth miner, you cannot do your planning without China. this simply does not fly. It is also, China is the place that is realistically looking forward and saying we are going into shortages, whatever it be. Let it be nickel, let it be cobalt, let it be copper, whatever. And they go out and look for investment opportunities, whereas the Western ones, they are fully focused on the bottom line and do not realize the bigger picture. So they will always be running after the market. So having said that, no junior rare earth miner should exclude China from their concept. It is commercially not viable.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like in terms of the technology and the processing, China has the advanced technology compared to the rest of the world. So whatever the juniors companies, they are new discoveries, then like it has to be adapted to the technology they're currently using for new discoveries. And we have very limited technology other than China, and also like was mentioned before, the supply chain and the network. Like any business, that is the key element: supply chain and the network. So that which they have already established.
One thing about technology, the core technology for processing rare earths has been banned for export from China. It cannot be licensed abroad. Much of it, like it's now in fashion to, iron adsorption clays are now the big hit everywhere, not realizing that this is totally unsustainable mining. This technology has been banned for export from China since 2001. Yeah. So it's as a junior miner outside China, it is not realistic to pin hopes on technology from China. Also Shanghai Resources will not do it. What they will do is they will buy your concentrate.
Yeah, to further clarify, and it's a good point. I mean, there are restrictions towards the downstream in separation. Upstream of that, flotation technology, crack and leach, still the ability to share in technology sharing and collaboration. But it is the pertinent point made around the Chinese rare earth ecosystem. I think there's something like 5,000 PhDs in China focused on rare earths. There are 39 universities also focused specifically on rare earths. Outside of China, there is one. So I mean that just shows the sort of the disparity and knowledge gap that there currently is between China and the rest of the world. I think it is a challenge to try and come up against that. Instead, as we've discussed, I think China can be part of the solution for some of these junior and development companies.
It's not that these PhDs only work in China. This is certainly not the case. They are also available abroad. If you look at papers, scientific papers about rare earths being published in the US or in Canada or in Australia, more often than not you see Chinese names on it. Yeah. Also in ongoing projects abroad, you will find Chinese geologists at work. So it is, they will not stay in China and gang up against the rest of the world. This is a labor force that is also available to others.
So, do we have any questions from the audience before we continue on? Okay, so I thought we could just maybe, before we wrap, look at kind of investment into the industry. So, is there money currently coming in to fund the junior space? Where is it coming from? What are juniors currently focused on in terms of fundraising and meeting their needs to grow?
So from an equity perspective, certainly there is strong appetite for investors to get exposure to rare earths. On the ASX alone, in the last year, there's been over $500 million raised towards rare earth companies. Our company, Peak Rare Earths, is on that list. So this year we were able to raise $27.5 million through a capital raising. And the most pleasing thing about that was the number of high-quality offshore institutional accounts that we were able to attract into that placement, which bodes well for the future. From an equity perspective as well, we are seeing OEMs start to turn their minds to rare earths. I think they've had a bit of a headache over the last few years trying to get their head around lithium and how they solve that problem. I think we're just starting to see OEMs turn their minds now to rare earths. We've seen GM with their partnership with MP Materials in the States. We've seen Hyundai with their participation in Arafura's Nolan Bore project in Australia. And certainly ourselves, we've had conversations with a number of OEMs. So I think certainly in the coming years, we'll see more of that in the sector. From a debt perspective, I think it's fair to say that commercial banks are still getting themselves up the curve with regards to understanding the sector, with regards to forming a house view on price. And in the absence of commercial lenders in the short term, there is the gap for strategic development funding, government funding to come in and fill out the capital stack. We've seen the likes of Japan's JOGMEC play a very important role over the last decade in the rare earth sector, backstopping Lynas and supporting Lynas through the journey that it's gone through over the last several years. But more recently, we've seen the Australian government with their very generous funding package for Iluka and the Eneabba refinery in Australia. And we've seen America start to play a real leading role in the space as well. So the DOD, the DOE, putting funding forward for Lynas and MP Materials separations plants in the States. I think we'll continue to see more and more of that in the coming years as projects require those alternative forms of capital to move projects forward.
Well, I think a very common error with regard to US government investment in rare earth companies is that this would be in any way beneficial to the open market. It is not. It is purely focused on the relatively small demand of the US defense industry. So do not expect a major impact from that into, say, the commercial market. What we can see is that after many, many years, investment banks try to become knowledgeable and make first attempts on analysis and recommendations. They are still learning, but it is coming. There are not many analysts active in rare earths. The one focused one was CLSA, who I think 5 years ago closed down that operation. So what we really need are knowledgeable analysts who explain investments to investors. The interest is there. There are a lot of people also in the private space who really, really want to get exposed, but there are too many bad apples among the junior rare earth miners, snake oil salesmen, you may call them, which kind of spoil it for those who make an honest effort.
In terms of the investors' attraction, especially the junior exploration company, my experience, I got more inquiries about compared to the other metals and rare earth. The investor attraction is high. I think it's continued to grow coming years.
So before we wrap things up, do we have any questions from the audience? I thought we could close out the session by just kind of taking a view forward into, moving forward in the industry. Where do you see the attention needing to be focused as the energy transition continues, and we need these key metals for new technologies? So what would you say are kind of the key messages, key focus for the industry moving forward? Maybe Sean, do you want to kick us off with your final comments?
We mentioned before the energy transition, the rare earths and the battery metal is going to play a major role in terms of the decarbonization and the ESG as well. So it takes a bit of time to get the targets. Each country they have their own scales and time sets. But in terms of the Australian, the government, what they said that, and the timings, and possibly it's achievable. So that's what we are moving towards the transition.
I think the resounding message today is, rare earths, will be and continue to be a critical part of the green transition. That much is very clear. I think, the focus and emphasis needs to be on how we bring forward new production in the future. I talked earlier around the need for holistic development solutions, including offtake funding, but also robust technical solutions as well. So they all need to be thought of collectively from a company's perspective. But then there also needs to be flexibility in funding and offtake arrangements to allow new supply to come forward, or else we simply won't be able to meet the demand for NdPr oxide and other rare earths to fill the gap in the coming years.
Well, the demand obviously is going to increase. Main consumer, China, has still a shortfall of magnet materials, so they are still out there looking for investment opportunities and will offtake from, I would say, advanced exploration projects at this stage, advanced. We will also see slowly but surely the development of value chains outside of China, which will become ever more important. But this is a very slow process outside. I would give it a timeline of, say, 10 years until some meaningful market evolves in the EU and in the US. Japan is fighting a defensive battle. We should not expect substantially more demand from Japan. But on the whole, I think if companies like Peak think also in holistic terms, see the whole market, which includes China, then there will be developments and there will be investments.
All right. Well, really interesting and great to kind of go a little bit more in depth into the rare earths industry and understand kind of its role in the energy transition overall. So with that, I'd like to thank our panelists for joining us for the last session of the day. So thanks to Sean, Matthew, and Thomas for joining me today.